Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. Joining me today for our third installment on the Wednesday Athlete Series is Lindsey Davis. Lindsey and I are going to be discussing her journey through her junior year as a softball player at UTSA. Lindsey is going to kind of break down the roller coaster that she was on, the highs, the lows, the hills, and the valleys, the key people that helped her along the way, and all the lessons that she learned throughout that process as well, and how you can apply them regardless of if you're an athlete yourself, a coach, or a clinician, or whatever role you have. You can certainly take a lot and learn a lot from Lindsey and her journey, and I really appreciate her perspective and the insights that she shared on the episode today. Highly recommend you check out Lindsey and everything that her and her teammates at UTSA are doing because they're an absolutely incredible group of people. I'm very thankful to have gotten connected with Lindsey through who we're going to refer to as Coach Fifi a number of times throughout the podcast. Episodes like this are made possible by ISOFIT. ISOFIT is the official sponsor for season 5 of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast and is my go-to choice for helping athletes to win more and hurt less. For more on ISOFIT, you can check the description below. Enjoy. Lindsey, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of this. It's super cool what you're doing here. And I'm thrilled and honored to be a part of it.
Huge shout out to Coach Fifi, we call her,
Oh,
because I
yes.
don't think you and I would have gotten connected if it wasn't for her. For people who might not have heard as much about you as I have, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all the amazing things that you do down there at UTSA?
Oh, stop it. So I am Lindsey. Daniel's right. I know him through Fifi, Coach Fifi. She's our strength and conditioning coach. Her government name's Sophia, but we managed to butcher that pretty good. So she's got a good nickname from us. But yeah, I'm a senior. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, that's scary to say. Okay. I'm a senior at UTSA. I play softball. I'm an outfielder. I'm also a computer engineering major. It's not as scary as it sounds, I promise. But I've been doing strength and conditioning for a long time. It's actually something that I'm very, very passionate about. I did weightlifting. I started competitive weightlifting in my junior year of high school, and like with knowing nothing and a little coaching, and was able to like make it to state, and just had so much fun doing it, and built such a community around it. And the other girls that did it with me, it just created such a positive environment for me around the weightlifting kind of scariness of it, which really progressed and helped me a lot when I moved into college and first met Fifi. And the thing about college is that you go through your highs and lows, and Fifi has seen me at some of my lowest lows and my highest highs. She's just having somebody that's down in the trenches with you is something that is just irreplaceable. And Fifi is somebody that has been in the trenches with me and never turned her back on me, and got to be there the days that it paid off. And I wouldn't trade her for the world. And I cannot sit here and say how thankful I am that I crossed her path enough.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think it's incredible to have that kind of understanding on the value or the impact that one person can have on another. And it's something that I'm guessing going into college, you weren't thinking, oh my gosh, my strength and conditioning coach is going to be like my person. And now here you are
No,
here and you're like,
it's so funny because like I knew going in that I already had a love for strength and conditioning. It was already something that I loved and had such a positive experience with. And it was just a cherry on top, meeting another person, like a human that shared that same love for the athlete strength development, and who just was so passionate about it. And I had never really had a coach that was that way. I was that way, but I never met a coach who was that way. And it was so refreshing.
I was going to ask you if you felt like that's the norm or the standard. Is that what everyone is like? But it sounds like in your experience, Coach Fifi in this case, I still laugh saying that. But it sounds like she was kind of the only one who really was able to humanize this process of strength and conditioning for you.
Yeah, the stereotype with strength coaches tends to be very hard-nosed, very hard-nosed and in your face, and like they're not there to be your friend. And that's kind of what I was used to. That's kind of how I was coached growing up. Just very tough. Having her come into the picture was like, wait, okay, so I can be passionate about this and not hate my life. Wait, that's crazy. So it was kind of like this almost rekindling of that passion, and then like a new growth of like, wait, I can do it and enjoy the person that I'm doing it with, you know? That was really, really, really cool and a really cool experience.
I think that having a strength coach or a professional that way to work with, that works with you and meets you where you're at, kind of helps keep you going from a motivational side of things. And you mentioned that, in this case, kind of been at highs and lows throughout your career. So is that more related to like sport or physical performance or injury, or is it more related to like a college side of thing, classwork, or, what was the roller coaster of, 3 going on 4 years of D1 softball like for you, Lindsey?
Oh, I love that you asked this question. It has been a roller coaster in the sense that things aren't always going to go to plan. One of my favorite Bible verses is people make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. I like to think of it as, us writing out our plan for our lives and God just like laughing at us as we do that, which is exactly what happened to me because I came in as a freshman. I was recruited out of high school thinking that I was just going to come in and like not breeze through it, but I did not anticipate how difficult it was going to be to really earn a spot on the squad. So, I that kind of punched me in the face a little bit. My first 2 years, I really didn't play that much. I got in a good bit, kind of the back half of my sophomore year, and then kind of building off of that, I was kind of expecting to come in and just right off the gate, kind of where I left off. That didn't happen. We got a new coaching staff after my sophomore year, so my junior year this past year. We had a whole new coaching staff. They told me our first travel series that I wouldn't be traveling with the team. And that stung a lot. So it didn't make sense to me. I was very hurt. I was embarrassed. I was a junior that didn't travel. And I lashed out. I lashed out at the people that I cared about. I lashed out at anybody who just wanted to ask if I was okay. And I was just a very not good version of myself. And Fifi got probably the biggest chunk of that because every day that the other team was traveling, the non-travelers had lift at 7 a.m. with Fifi. And every morning she would ask me if I was okay. I always had some smart response like, what do you think? What do you think? And like looking back, I still feel sick thinking about it because she was just trying to help, but I was just in such a horrible place. I was so unavailable to be helped in that moment. But a big turning point for me during that time was I was keeping up with the games and how we were doing and watching how we were performing. And at the end of the weekend, I realized that everybody that traveled got to play in the game. Freshmen, people who weren't on scholarship, like everyone that got to go into play. And as someone who didn't play very much their first 2 years of their career, that kind of hit me like a brick because I was like, man, some of those girls are not going to get to play again for a while. And that is very rare that everybody that travels gets to play. And I'm sitting there to myself thinking like, who would I have wanted to take that away from? Like, would I really want to take that away from anybody? Because I know that I'm going to get my shot. I mean, I didn't travel because of a technicality on grades. And that's why I was so upset, because I felt like I was getting slighted or getting used as like a scapegoat. But then seeing that and seeing that, me knowing the sad reality of being a freshman on a D1 team, I suddenly was grateful that they got to go in my place. And that was just such a turning point for me, just mentally, that I didn't care if I traveled again for the rest of the season for myself, if that meant that those guys got to get their shots and go. Like, it suddenly in that moment wasn't about me anymore. You know, when they got back, the coaches called me in for a meeting because they knew that I was upset. I mean, I was a total jerk to everyone. I vividly remember this. I sat down in Van Studeman's office, and all she said was, "What's going on?" And I told her everything that I just told you, and she started crying. I didn't know why at the time, but she started crying, and I was just like kind of taken aback by that. And then she and I just, had such a raw conversation about like what it means to be on a team, really, and what it really means to be a guiding figure on a team, and to be a woman, and a strong independent woman, because she and I are both that. But we just had one of the most vulnerable, from both sides, conversations, and just so open, and I'm so grateful for it. And then come to find out that she was going into that meeting ready to cut me from the team because of my actions, but because of what the revelation that I had, and the realization that I had, and that I told her about, she changed her mind, thank gosh. I just went to work after that, and I was a cheerleader, and I was a just absolute weapon at practice, just getting ready for, my turn so that I could do good for the team. And it happened, and I got my shot, and it was against Charlotte. It was a home series. It was our alumni series. I go in. I just before that had been working in warmups. I tend to treat warmups like practice. If I knew I wasn't gonna go in that game, I would kind of tweak some stuff during and just use it as like practice time. And I had figured out a cue that had helped my swing a lot. And mentally, I was just in such a relaxed headspace. And I went off that game. I had a first pitch bomb to dead center and first home run of my career. And then my next at bat, I dropped a drag bunt down the first base line, and then I came up and hit another home run my third at bat. So like just highs of high, like the highest of highs and lowest of lows. I'd say like my junior year was probably the biggest roller coaster I've ever experienced in a single season. But like I wouldn't trade it for anything. The stuff that I've learned about being tough and being gritty and not going away. Yeah, that's kind of the roller coaster so far.
There's so much to unpack here, Lindsey.
Yes.
So much. So let's get into it. First off, I think that a lot of athletes can relate to the first half of that story. I think a
Yeah.
lot of athletes have been told at different times for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's academic, maybe it's performance related, maybe it's something else, whatever it is. I think that a lot of athletes have found themselves in situations where they feel separated from the team, whether that's because they can't travel or maybe because of injury and they can't practice with the team and they can't do the same things that the rest of their team is doing. But I find a lot of athletes have run into a similar situation where they feel that they are just disconnected from the team, that they're not a part of it, that they're not able to do what everyone else is doing. They've put their time in. They've put their hours in. They've been there 2 years or 3 years, and their time should be called. And they think their time is there, and then something comes up, whatever it is, and they're stuck waiting even longer. And I think
Yeah.
that situation is incredibly frustrating for the athlete. You all have so much going on in life in the first place. I mean, in your case, being an engineering major, I don't know how you do it. The amount of academic work and pressure that you must be under is insane. But the fact of the matter is, every college athlete also has academics to worry about. So we've got this academic workload. Oh, on top of that, we might have some stuff going on at home. I know that you're like oldest sister or something like that. So you never know what home life might be like for someone. On top of that, college is a time when I've noticed a lot of people get into relationships and some work out and some don't. There's all these other factors and stressors that can kind of compound on this situation. And I feel like it becomes a case where literally any one small thing going wrong can literally set off an athlete at any point. It becomes almost like a ticking time bomb situation just from the sheer amount of stress and pressure that I think you all experience on an average day. Please correct me if I'm wrong about any of that. I mean, just last week, from the time we're recording this, I had a night where I unfortunately did not sleep much, and I had like less than 2 hours of sleep. And I was going about my day, and I was tired, and it was really hard for me to get through what I had to get through. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about all the stories of the athletes that I work with from a PT side of things, who are on 2 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep every single night, and still finding a way to get it done and make it happen. And I was like, man, if I'm struggling one night like this, how are my athletes getting by when every night is like this?
So one of the things that Van has taught us is that pressure is a privilege. The pressure that we feel to perform and to be, upstanding members of society and to get our jobs done in the classroom, those are all byproducts of answered prayers. I mean, I can remember nights where I would cry myself to sleep because I was worried that I wasn't going to get recruited. So, a quote that I like is, don't complain about having too much on your plate if you wanted to eat. So, I came here to eat. I came here to make waves, to do stuff, to be an active member of this culture that we're trying to build and this new chapter that we're trying to write for this program. So I see it as a blessing, as something that, when things get hard, I know that what's going to come after it is going to be a better version of myself. It's a lot easier when you've come out on the other side, like for me to say that after the season that I've had and how it's just worked out. So just like storybook ending, but it's given me that hope that like if I can get through that and come through the other side of that with anything positive, like I can do anything. So like I have that, and then I just have the faith of knowing that God's not going to put anything on my plate that I can't handle. I mean, I may have to seek his help, which I do very often, but it's not going to be anything that he can't help me with. So I also have that to fall back on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's just so much that athletes like me and like my teammates deal with on a daily basis. I mean, I have a teammate, Kylie Forney, who has been injured and rehabbed and injured again and rehabbed and then injured something else and then rehabbed, and all she wants to do is just be with the team. She doesn't care about playing time. She doesn't care about batting averages. She just wants to be with us. And I'm sitting here looking at her and I'm like, how dare I complain about everything? I've never had an injury, thank God. I've never had anything that's put me out of playing. And who am I to complain about pressure? Who am I to complain about not traveling? I have the ability to. I could. Like it's things like that, and it's gives me an appreciation and a gratitude for the position that I'm in, and it makes me want to glorify the one that gave it to me.
You mentioned that this whole semester felt like a revelation for you,
Yeah.
for lack of a better way to put it, right? And I think that that's the other side to this coin, right? So as we mentioned, every athlete, I don't care what sport, I don't care what level, every athlete is going to face trying times, difficult
Right.
times. It's inevitable. But it's not what happens to us, it's how we choose to respond to it and how we choose to react to it. And I think, as you mentioned, everyone's initial actions are typically denial and anger and frustration. That's just kind of how people normally react when things don't go our way. And I think that it's okay to understand and feel those things, but I don't personally feel it's okay to stay there, because taking your specific case and your specific example, imagine the conversation you and I would be having right now, if we would even be having this conversation, if things didn't change for you, if you never experienced that mindset shift, the paradigm movement, the revelation that you did experience during this year, during your season. And I think that that is something that's powerful and impactful. Is, like I said, every athlete is going to face times like this, but how we choose to respond to them, and it's on us to choose our response to the situation. It's not on anyone else. We can't point the finger here. We really have to find a way to take ownership for our situation, accountability for the actions that we have taken, or maybe actions that we haven't taken that we need to, and determine how to progress and move the needle forward from there accordingly. And I think that's something that, as you've found yourself through your own life in the past few months, when you take those steps to improve your life and improve who you are as a person and hone your craft in sport and become a better person, a better athlete, and just work on improving yourself in every sense, good things happen. And I think that the more we kind of focus on that betterment piece, the better off we make everyone around us and ourselves. And you mentioned before about the value of a team. That's why I mentioned the betterment of everyone around us. It's not just about us at the end of the day. I know that everyone is the hero in their own story and everyone wants the comic book to, close out with them being the good guy. But at the end of the day, maybe we're a lot less important than we think we are. And maybe it's not about what we can accomplish, but what we can help others accomplish. At the end of the day, if we want to leave a legacy at a place, I don't care if that's a small town, if it's on your team, wherever it is, then you have to have an impact that lasts beyond your time there. Every athlete, unfortunately, has to face a time and a point where they have to retire from their sport. But that doesn't mean that their impact on the sport is finished. It means that if they built their legacy right and they helped others along the way, that maybe, just maybe, many years down the line, people will still be saying their name. People are still going to remember them. And people are still going to be talking, oh, hey, you remember Lindsey Davis, that game against Charlotte when she hit 2 home runs in a single game, right? The kinds of things that last and the kinds of things that inspire future generations. And I think that that's the kind of thing that athletes, every athlete, has the ability to achieve. Maybe I'm too optimistic by saying that, but I do believe that truly.
No,
If
I
we
think you're
respond
absolutely right.
if we
Yeah.
respond to the stressors and pressures that are presented to us on the day to day in the right way. And as you mentioned, in your story that way about how, you felt like everything was kind of ripped from you because you weren't traveling with the team. It makes me think of the book of Job, where everything was lost, but then so much more was returned, more than anyone thought was even possible. So just because you might have lost everything for a short period of time does not mean that it's going to be that way forever.
And a really cool thing about the book of Job is that one, he never cursed God. And I can't say that I do the same because I was very upset with my authority figure. So he's better than me. And it it took a ton of maturity and it was a just absolute gut punch in that moment when like kind of woke up and realized like what I was doing to the people around me and to myself. It was a very gut-wrenching feeling to know that I was doing that to people. But it really took me stepping outside myself and realizing that, like, what am I here for? Am I here for me to pad my stats, or am I here to win games? Because if so, God didn't make me the coach for a reason. I'm not the coach. So if the coach, who is the coach for a reason, has decided to put other people on the field, they see something that I don't see, or they are trying to win the game. So why would I not be on the same page as them trying to win the game? Why would I not be happy for them and cheer them on and do anything I can in the role that I'm given to help the team win the game? It didn't matter. It didn't make a difference to me after that point who was on the field and who was on the bench and who was in the stands and anything. Like the 9 positions on the field were just numbers. And it became, okay, how can I support the 9 that are on the field, or the 10? What can I do to get these 9 faceless, nameless group of people and set us up for success? And that's when I was practicing and getting better, for not for myself and not so that I could shine whenever I got my chance. It was so that when I did get my chance, I could help my team. And it was my responsibility at that point. It wasn't a so I can get mine. It was a I'm going to contribute to this team and I'm going to make us better and I'm going to do something for us.
Right. It becomes that moment where you realize this is a lot bigger than just me. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other people involved in this. And I think that that's something that often goes unrecognized or missed by people, because you're right, it's a team. Everyone is working together with the common goal of
Yes.
winning something bigger than them, something
Yeah.
that they can't accomplish on their own. And I think that people underestimate the role that they play in that process. Whether you're, you mentioned at one point you kind of felt like the cheerleader, and
Oh yeah.
that can be the most helpful thing if you say the right things to the right person at the right time. And if you say the wrong things to the wrong person, or say nothing to the person at the wrong time, then it can be an incredible detriment. And you can literally watch teams rise and fall based on how well their team is developed from a chemistry standpoint and how well they work together in that environment. And I think the more that you all cohesively come together with that common goal of, hey, I don't care what role I'm playing in this, as long as we are all still on the same mission and still working towards the same thing and working together to get there, I don't care what role I play in that, as long as I get to that point. That's what I see the value of teamwork based approaches as. And that's sort of how I approach things from a rehab standpoint with my athletes. I don't force any athlete to come to me. And if at any point they want to stop coming to me, they know right where the door is and they don't have to come to me. But if they do choose to work with me from a rehab standpoint, then I want to get to know everyone, who's anyone, involved in their entire athletic career, development process, and so on that way. I want to know their strength coach. I want to know their AT. I want to know their head coach or position skills coach. I really want to get a handle on anyone and everyone who's involved with this athlete. And I want to determine how we can all best work together as a unit to provide for that person in front of us. Because the better we do our job as a team, the better that person in front of us is going to do and the more success they're going to experience. And I'm willing to play any role in that process. I can be the driver and I can steer that ship wherever it needs to go. Or if I need to take a backseat role and let someone else say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and I just kind of play my part, that's fine. At the end of the day, as long as our goal of athlete gets better and athlete is getting the needs that they need fulfilled, then who am I to complain at the end of the day?
One thing that I was told, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you can't unite people to a common goal if they don't know that you're invested in them. And that, in the beginning of this season, I was basically telling all of my teammates that I didn't care about them. It wasn't about them, it was about me. And that broke a lot of trust that they had in me and a lot of um, love that they had for me. And I lost that and I ruined that. And I spent the rest of, my season fighting to get that back because that's what it's about. And it's hard to fight with somebody and fight for somebody if you feel like they wouldn't do the same for you. So, and I'm so grateful that I have teammates that are willing to give me grace and that did and that welcomed me back with open arms. I have a picture on my Instagram after I hit my first home run. Van has a rule that we tend to get a little excited when people hit home runs, that we will infringe on the don't go into fair territory rule, which could cause the home run to get overturned in just not a good situation. So yeah, we have trouble controlling ourselves. So our rule is that we have to stay in the dugout until the person touches home plate and then we can celebrate. Well, my teammates, a couple of them ignored that rule and chose to ask for forgiveness instead of permission because they were, and this is, if you know Van Studeman, you can appreciate this, but they were willing to face her wrath so that they could love on me in that moment because they knew what that meant. And they knew that that was not just another home run. We were losing the game, but they knew what that meant to me. And they were willing to just and be in that moment with me. That's a moment that I'll never forget, is the way that they did that for me. And Van didn't even yell at them. So
No, that's incredible. And it's amazing to be able to experience moments like that after, as we mentioned before, the roller coaster of everything. And it goes up and it goes down. And I think that that makes you appreciate moments like that even more, because you're like, look at all that I went through in order to get to this point.
it makes me appreciate the lows even more, because if
Yeah.
that is what turns into that, like, give me more. Give me another one of those gut punches. Like, come on. Like, and it gives you like that fire of like, okay, so that's what it takes and that's what I get from it. So like bring it on. Like give me more of that.
No, I love that mindset and I love that mentality that you bring around that concept. And I think that that's something that a lot of people, a lot of athletes sometimes struggle with, kind of finding that internal fire and internal passion for things. So where does that motivation come from? Does it ever run out? And who helps you stay motivated and trust the course and trust the process that you've been on?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a very analytical person. I tend to think really deeply about things. One thing that I will usually do if a situation doesn't turn out how I want it to is I will reflect on exactly what happened, exactly what went wrong, and I won't get over it until I've got a plan for the next time. Whatever the situation is, if I got in a car wreck or if, I got in an argument with somebody, like I will go through everything that I did and pick out what I could have done differently. That way, if the situation arises again, I'll have a plan. And sometimes I may never experience that again. But more oftentimes than not, that's helped me to be able to move forward instead of continuing to deal with the same problems over and over and over again. So, that was something that, so, okay. So when I was in high school, I had a similar situation. I had a falling out with a coach, and she was a lot less open to having the conversation that Van was open to having with me. And I was not in a maturity headspace to be able to get out of myself and look around and see the bigger picture. And I've thought about that a lot because that affected a lot about my high school experience, my senior year of high school. It was miserable. So I've spent a lot of time diving into that and thinking about what I could have done differently and what I should have done differently. And that was a situation where I'm like, I've felt this before. And it took me back immediately. And I knew immediately, like, that it was not happening again, but I could handle this better. I'm a better person now. So that helped me a lot, just that practice of reflection and going through and taking the time to really nitpick at situations that I've been through and circumstances and that have affected me negatively. So I don't have to deal with it again, like Van talks about expensive experience versus inexpensive experience, where expensive experience is where it costs you something. Whatever the situation was, you lost something out of it. Whereas inexpensive experience is something that maybe somebody else did that you can learn from. It didn't really cost you a whole lot. So expensive experience tends to stack up over time if you keep making the mistake again. If you don't get anything out of it, you failed until you've learned something from it. Then it's not failure anymore. It's an education. So I don't like to fail, and I don't like to fail and not know why. I will get to a reason why, because there's always a reason why. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in coincidence. So I will find a reason why. And whether it's the right reason or I don't know, but I'll find a reason or I'll make one up so I can go to sleep at night.
No, it's so interesting to bring up this concept of failure. You mentioned that a few times there, and how it seems like you don't like failing. It seems like you're going to work really hard. You're going to put all the effort in to make sure you come out on top.
I'm
And
okay with failing once. If
yeah,
I fail once at something, okay. But if I fail the same way again, that I don't do that. I don't like doing that because
yeah,
then it is failing. It's not, you're not, if you're continuously doing the same thing or dealing with the same issue, whether it's, fighting with your parents or uh your car won't start, and if you don't dig into the issue, it's gonna keep happening. And brushing it under the rug or just hoping that it doesn't happen again doesn't really teach you anything. You don't get anything out of it.
you have to take action on it. You can't just
Yeah.
sit by passively. You have to do something. And I think
Yeah.
I want to say it was Edison had a quote that opportunity becomes missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks a lot like work or something along those lines. And I think that that kind of ties into this concept with failure.
Yeah.
I'll take the opposite approach. I actually like when I fail at things, and a lot of people are going to hear that and say, what do you mean? That's confusing. But I like when I can't figure it all out at first. I like when the pieces don't fit together or I struggle a little bit, because that's something that's actually going to move the needle forward. If I can just figure everything out and I have all the answers and I know everything, then I'm probably not in the right environment, and I'm probably not growing, and I'm probably not pushing myself to the potential of what I could be. I'm probably just staying in that comfort zone, and those comfort zones can become very dangerous. Taking the example where you mentioned you were trying and practice different cues for your swing and you found one that worked. Well, if you didn't start throwing stuff against the wall and figure out what worked and what didn't work, you might not have ever experienced the success that you did. But I'm willing to bet that there's multiple failures before you experienced a success, and that's not something that's exclusive to just the athlete. That's something that we see across anyone who's done great things. I think Edison himself, when he invented the light bulb, attempted over 1,000 times. In fact, I want to say he had 1,093 patents trying to make something that's in every single home in today's day and age. I can't tell you the last time I've tried something more than 10 times, let alone 1,093 times, and still kept going. So I think that everyone, every athlete, every person is going to be faced with these challenges or trials or whatever you want to call them. And we're going to fail. We're going to come up short at times, and that's okay. But as you mentioned, it's not okay to stay there. We have to put in some kind of effort, and we have to do something to move the needle forward. We have to push the rock up the metaphorical mountain, so to speak, in order to get out of that spot. And I think that you're right. People can end in this vicious cycle of failing over and over and over again. And in life, you're not going to be able to stop the waves that hit you, but you can certainly teach yourself how to surf.
Absolutely. I think it's a great metaphor, because the waves are never going to stop ever. And the work as you get older, and as I, am encroaching on retiring from softball, like, that doesn't mean that my problems are going to go away. And that doesn't mean that life is just going to be butterflies and rainbows. Like, there is going to be things that you feel like you are running your head up against a wall trying to figure out with no end in sight. And it's to me, it feels like a disservice to myself to give up if I've gotten myself that far. And that's kind of where I felt at practice. There was our starting center fielder was killing it. I mean, she was a redshirt freshman. She was barely 18 and was just absolutely showing off. And I mean, I was thrilled for her, but deep down, I was sad because there was no end in sight. She was just a beast. So I made up my mind that I'm not going to give up. I might run out of time before I give up, but I'm not giving up. And that's kind of that decision that you have to make in your own gut to say, bring it on, bring on the waves, bring on the rip currents, bring it, because I'm not going anywhere. And once you kind of accept that, and you accept that it's not going to get any easier, working hard doesn't make it any easier. Working hard doesn't make the problems go away, and it doesn't make that feeling of, am I ever going to get a chance? You have to accept that you may not get a chance. It might not fall in your lap. But would you still keep going if you knew that you weren't going to get another chance? And that's kind of the decision that I made, is like, I may not see the field for the rest of my career, but I'm going to work like I'm in the starting lineup tomorrow because I owe it to the rest of my team. Because if I get thrown in, that's them on the line. I'm not going to let them down if that happens. It may not happen. I don't know.
Right. Like we talked about before on the legacy side of things, you never know who you're going to inspire by doing that, right? You go out there, you put 110% effort in and day out. Everyone starts looking around like, who's this? Is this the same Lindsey we just saw 2 weeks ago? Like, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, she's working really hard. She's busting her butt every play. I better do the same. And then you elevate the standard of not just yourself, but everyone around you by your actions. And I think that that's something that, the impact of just showing up and working hard and not necessarily knowing what the outcome is going to be, but just knowing you've got to check the box and put your time in. I think the impact of that is absolutely intangible. I think you brought up another interesting point. You mentioned that word retirement from softball. And I mentioned earlier that everyone's sports career comes to an end at some point. Mm-hmm. So what has been the mindset or framework for you as you approach that point? And how do you suggest other athletes approach that concept of knowing that the sport might end at some point or that it will end at some point?
Yeah.
How do they prepare for that?
Scary retirement word is a very new one to my vocabulary. It's one that you always know is coming, but when you realize how close it is, it starts to get really scary. And I think it's important to, first of all, get comfortable with the fear and be okay and know that it is perfectly normal to be afraid of that, because it's unknown. I mean, most people that play at the level that I'm at have played their whole lives, and not having that in your life is foreign. It's unknown, and that by nature is scary. So it's important to accept that it's not going to get any less scary. and be okay and be comforted in knowing that everybody will experience that fear at some point. That is kind of the biggest kind of like hump to get over at first, I think. And then from there, it's just like what happens happens, you know? Like I'm going to do my best. Like I said earlier, I'm digging my heels in and I'm going to do my best because that's who I am. That's my identity, is giving my best, working for the Lord and not men. That's me. So it doesn't say work until you get an opportunity. It doesn't say work so that you can get an opportunity. It's work for the Lord, period. So that's what I do. And that's what I have created my identity to be. I've formed that identity. And if you feel like it is too late for you to form an identity, I did that 2/3 of the way through my junior year of college after 11 years of playing the sport. It is never too late for it. It is poetic for someone to redefine their identity as an athlete that late in their career. That being said, it's comforting knowing that I have that to kind of guide me in my day to day and what my day to day looks like, doing my best regardless of what may or may not happen in the future or what may or may not happen for me. You know, I do my best. I give it all I got. I show up with what I've got. And if success is meant to be, it'll be. And if it's not, I can't say that I didn't try.
As you mentioned, it's about having that bigger purpose, something that you're working towards that's more than you. And I think that's essential. And I think based on what you've shared and how you're approaching that concept of retirement, so to speak, I think that softball in this case has really set you up for a successful life, not just a successful athletic career or playing career, but actual success throughout your entire life. And I think that that's something a lot of athletes can relate to as well, is this concept that just because sport ends doesn't mean that the lessons and the value that you learned from it is gone. And if anything, I think that the work that you put in during the playing time that you have can make or break the rest of your life and put you on a track to success, or put you on a track to, as you mentioned before, continue to fail because you haven't learned the lessons yet. And they're going to continue to repeat themselves until you get them and until you understand them. So I see a lot of value in kind of taking a step back from whatever situation you're in and analyzing and assessing almost as like a third person point of view, and being able to appreciate some of those different things and how they're going to set you up for success in the long run.
So I mentor a couple younger youth athletes. I'm in a program that connects me with youth softball players around the country, and I will speak to them, and I help coach on my sister's high school team. Um, and I did strength and conditioning training for some local girls for a couple years since I've been in college. And one question that I always ask them is, what do you like about yourself as an athlete? And what do you not like about yourself as an athlete? And it gives them the opportunity and the boldness and the power to identify those things, because I've had girls who straight up could not tell me one single thing that they liked about themselves as an athlete. And that is so sad. And it's so baffling to me that someone can enjoy the sport without being able to identify one thing about themselves that they like and they feel like they do well or that they enjoy about themselves. That's something that I think as mentors and as leaders that I am begging that we get better at, is giving our girls and our kids the authority to take control of their identity as an athlete and really understand what that means, and that it's not how many home runs you hit. If you like that about yourself, then that's great. For example, my teammate Kylie, I talked about her earlier. One thing I love about Kylie as an athlete is that she's gonna talk you up. There have been several times that I was on deck, scared out of my mind before I got in the box. And no athlete wants to admit that because of pride, but I was. And she looked at me and she just, with the like most stone cold face, you're going to get this done. You've done everything that you have needed to do to get to where you are right now. You deserve to be here and you're going to get it done. Oh my gosh. Like, let me just go like run through a brick wall really quick. Jeez. And that's just something that, like, how do you not get fired up when somebody looks at you in your eyes and has been there with you in the cages, in the just sweat nastiness of practice, has seen you there, has the authority to tell you that? Like, I get chills thinking about it. So that is something that, like, if our girls can identify these things about themselves, build off of them, and reflect about the things and really reflect on the things that they don't like instead of bashing themselves. I will not, I will not let my girls bash themselves. I won't do it. If I hear them say, I suck, I can't throw, I can't this, I'm slow, I'm like, stop talking. And some of them think that I'm crazy or that I'm just mean. Well, they think that I'm mean until they do something good, or they kind of have that moment of like, wait, and they kind of have that learning moment, and I just am like their biggest cheerleader, that they're like, oh wait, okay, maybe she's not like just purely mean. But I won't allow it. I will not allow them to talk to themselves that way, because they're working hard and they are trying, and that's the part that's important. We can take authority over things that we don't like and put names on them and take that power away from those things, but we don't have to bash ourselves to do that.
Yeah, we are our own worst enemy sometimes.
Yes.
And it's so easy to get caught up in this trap of negativity. And the issue is, if we start to say it enough, it becomes true after a while. I think our mind is a very powerful thing, and we really start to manifest those thoughts and those little, whatever you want to call them, that we keep saying saying to ourselves over time. We become those. And I think the more we get stuck in that downward spiral of negativity, the more it's going to kind of grow roots and blossom like a tree in a way that we don't want it to. So, recently we did a podcast with Tim Kelly, and he shared the tale of two wolves, how, there's a good one and a not so good one. And every day, the one that's going to win is the one in which we feed. So I think that your point of powering positivity and lifting others up and empowering people and not allowing those negative mindsets and negative actions to persist is absolutely essential. And I think that that's something that we, on the broader scale, as strength coaches and PTs, ATs, clinicians, whatever term you want to throw at it, I don't care what the title is. I think that that's something that we really need to understand, is the words that we say when we're working with athletes are going to carry weight, and it can make or break that athlete's entire day. So understanding when to say what you want to say and how to phrase it, how to approach it, and overall just the importance of individualizing how we interact with each of our athletes, because you're all so different and so unique, which is a great thing, but we need to treat you as such. And if we are not treating you as a unique person compared to the rest of your teammates, then we're ultimately doing you a disservice. And we're going to say, hey, you know what? You're all the same in my eyes. So I don't want to go the extra mile. I don't want to put in this extra time to make it better for you specifically. And I'm just going to, cookie cutter. I'm going to give everyone the same thing, the same stuff, and hope it works. And that's wishful thinking. But I see it all the time in this field, and it drives me crazy. I think the importance of individualizing everything, not just, the exercise selection or the programming or, how we rehab an injury, but even the way we talk and interact with people has to be there first and foremost. And the other piece that I feel like we could all take away from your story as well is, you never know what someone is going through and what someone is facing. And literally sometimes the most important thing for someone might not be getting through, another set of the exercises that you program for them. It might just be, hey, let's have a little walk and talk real quick, and then we're going to call it a day. But if you never take the time to get to know your athletes, you're never going to know what's what, and you're always going to be guessing on where they're at and what's going on. So I think take the time to really get to know your athletes deeply and personally so that you can pick up when things are going well and things are not, and then understand how you can kind of go about shifting your plan for the day accordingly. I'll give you an example off of that, or a quick story. One of the athletes I was working with, she had just experienced a breakup, and I kind of felt like it was coming because in this case, her boyfriend was refusing to take her out for Valentine's Day of all days. So I was like, this just doesn't feel right to me. But next time I saw her, sure enough, she had shared the news that her boyfriend and her decided to go separate ways. And I could just kind of tell before she even said anything that something was off. So that day became a outdoor workout day. And it became a very walking intensive kind of session where we did a lot of loaded carry type things, which turned out to be exactly what she needed. She needed to move in a way that was challenging, but not too challenging. She needed to get outside and so on that way. So sometimes I think that recognizing we can go off plan, meet people where they're at, and then provide something of value for them, even if it's not what we initially thought it would be, can really make all the difference for people. And if we as, clinicians or providers are not willing to do that for the people in front of us, then I have to question why we're in the space that we're in, because at the end of the day, we serve people, we treat people. Yes, it's cool to get so caught up in the athletic performance side of things and all the cool things that our athletes do, but at the end of the day, we have to treat them as people, because they are people and they face a lot of challenges and setbacks. And if we don't acknowledge that and understand that, then again, we're doing them a huge disservice. And I don't think we're in it for the right reason.
And I love that you brought up the wolf metaphor. That's another one that Van talks about a lot. And I would like to even take that a bit further. For me, it's not enough to starve the negative wolf. I want to face it. I want to figure out what its deal is, put a leash and a muzzle on that thing, and turn it into a good wolf. That is what I want. And it's not enough to just ignore it and run away, because that's what I feel like a lot of times happens, is we have that negative emotion or that negative feeling, and it's scary, and you just want to run away, and you tuck it back in the deep dark corners of your mind, never think about it. And usually it comes back to bite you pretty hard, because you're going to mess up at some point and you're going to accidentally slip it some food. So what I like to do is every time a negative wolf pops up, I'm training that thing. I'm animal control, lasso on it. I mean, is it better to just have one wolf fighting for you or two? So if every time one comes up and you can convert it into something positive, think about the absolute stuff you could pull with an entire army of wolves. To sound silly, but realistically, that's what it is. It's taking those negative emotions and getting into the root of them and turning them into a weapon. And I think that's just the most empowering feeling, is taking something that's defined you and that's limited you and put a ceiling on you and put a muzzle on you and turning it into something that's setting you forward or that's helping you. Yeah, I think that's just a big part of why I'm in the position that I'm in. And I want to empower other people to do that also. You don't have to run from your negative emotions. You don't have to run from the fear and and you don't have to just starve it out either. You don't have to be constantly fighting against yourself to not feed into it, address it, get into it. And it's painful. It is painful and it hurts. and it's vulnerable, and sometimes you can't do it by yourself, and you gotta ask somebody for help, which is hard in itself, but it's you build up an army that way, and that's the resilience, real resilience that people have and show and are able to do all of these crazy, like David Goggins type stuff. Like, it's by taming that those thoughts, not just starving them. But another thing that you talked about, like, was the getting to know your athletes. We had a trainer, her name's Brandy. She just had a gift for getting to know people. And she did more, helped us more by knowing what to tell people to do, instead of coming up with the best training programs and the best rehab programs and the most perfect plans for progressions and working back to playing. That is great for an athlete that is a robot. A lot of girls aren't robots, and we feel things, and we feel things deeply, and we feel things raw and vulnerably, and it's hard and it's brutal and it sucks. When you have someone who has that gift and is able to see you there, and like you said, meet you where you're at, the physiological effects of being seen and being accepted for where you are is more beneficial than any rehab exercise or treatment program that exists, in my opinion.
And I might be a little biased, but I agree. Lindsey, I feel like we covered so many different topics relating to your own story and journey as an athlete, and how it can kind of serve as a springboard and motivation and inspiration for other athletes, but also other coaches and clinicians to kind of rethink or refine the way in which we work with the athletes that we get to serve day in and day out. Do you have any closing thoughts or closing remarks or anything we might have missed?
I mean, I feel like we've covered so much. I'm so grateful for the coaches and the teammates that have put their faith and trust in me and have seen me and just accepted me for who I am and what I am, stuck their necks out for me. It has motivated me to be a better person for that reason, and for those people, to prove them right. I think if we can take a minute to recognize those areas that people have had faith in us and take a look at the people around us, you can find a lot of motivation there.
I think that having that, support system or group of
Yeah.
people around you, whatever it looks like,
Mhm.
is an essential element as well. And that's something that cannot be overlooked. And looking back at it, being able to say thank you to those people and the appreciation that you have for them for sticking with you.
Yeah.
Because people, like I mentioned before, in relation to my practice, people can come and go at any time.
Yeah.
The same is true with the people around you from a network standpoint. People
Mhm.
can leave at any point. They don't have to be there, but they choose to be there. So understanding that we have to give appreciation and thanks to those who stick with us, even when things are a little bit bumpy. I
Yeah.
think that's a great point. Lindsey, for people who want to find out more about you and stay up to date with all the amazing stuff that you're doing and all of your teammates at UTSA are doing, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so you can find us at UTSA Softball. That's going to be our handle: X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram is probably going to be your best bet. Our media team does a phenomenal job. If nothing else, you want to be entertained by some of the stuff that they put out there. Our media team is one of the best in the country, and they make us feel like absolute rock stars. So definitely go check us out there. They do such an amazing job. It's definitely worth checking out, especially if you think that you may want to get into media, marketing, digital design, any of it. They got a really good program going. So
That's awesome. We'll link to all of that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch that, you can just click there. Lindsey, this was amazing. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
thanks for inviting me.